Thank you so much, viewers all over the world. It is a great pleasure to meet you again and then to discuss with you once more about something that is very important, that has touched our lives. A number of us have experienced this. And then this evening you have Dr. Dickens. I'm around and I'm live from Bugema University here in Luero, Uganda. That is East Africa, and then we are really grateful to have you in this discussion. It's a topic of importance because so many people have actually fallen short of this, and then that has been a very big challenge. Life is what we always after, and then we would really want to see that once we have life, at least we have life in fullness. And then whatever we are trying to discuss today is majorly about stress. If you realize, every organization, every family, and then every business has actually suffered some form of stress. And then these range from the employees to the employers as well. And then you will realize that all of us at one point, ideally, we experience some kind of stress that ideally changed our lives or even ruined our lives in this case. And then what we would really want you to know as viewers and then as people who are getting to know about stress the more, we always understand this. It is an automatic physical, mental, and emotional response to a challenging event. So at least at one point, each of us, we have been faced at least by a challenging moment. And then we have actually handled these challenging moments. And then it would depend on how we actually handle these challenging moments. Have we handled it positively or negatively? How do we respond to a challenging moment? Emotionally, physically, how do we respond to such moments? And then that is what we would really want to discuss today, because so many families have fallen apart. So many people have divorced, and then all because of this kind of problem, the stress, that will actually not be handled in a positive way. At workplaces, people are missing duties. People are actually absent from workplaces, all because people are actually stressed. And then we're going to discuss this deeper, and then we really understand how do we handle all this. And then I want to bring to your attention that stress is a normal part of everyone's life. And then whenever we use this positively, then it helps us to grow. It helps us ideally to change our ways of life. It helps us to adventure into new ways or new avenues that will actually help us in future to build us. And then, if at all we handle it in a negative way, and then it has taken long, what we call the long-term stress, you'll find that that will lessen your quality of life. At the end of the day, you will actually, most of the people end up committing suicide. And then that is the reason so many people are depressed in the world as of today. Be it pastors, businessmen, married people, unmarried, the youths, they are actually suffering. And then you would really wonder, how do we handle our stress? How do we help our community? How do we help our people to know that we can handle stress in a positive way and then still be good people and then still be productive? I want to bring to your attention that almost up to about 75% of all doctors' visits, all visits within the hospital, they are always stress related. All complaints that come to doctors at their desk, it's majorly because of stress. And then you will realize that almost we estimate up to about 80 to 90% of all industrial accidents are all related to personal problems of workers. They are actually stressed at their workplaces. Somebody is operating the machine, but then already stressed. And that is the main reason we're having so many accidents at the workplaces. You have so many employees, but then have you ever gotten to understand that one of them or all of them are actually stressed? Could be because of your mistake either. Could be because of the work-related issues, and then that can still be handled in a better way. And then we are trying to see that almost up to 1,080 ideally people in the UK, they are actually dying each year. That is a very big number, 1,080. That would actually be too much. And then Everyone dying, at least because of stress-related illnesses. This is a big number. And then we really want to see, how do we handle this as people who are together, as people who communicate? How do we handle our stress? And then I want to take you through a simple process, and then at least how you would get to know that at least there is a problem going on. And then how you can identify that there is a problem actually going on with you. And then one thing that we will need to know, this is how stress affects your body, affects our body. And then you will realize that these are the physical symptoms of stress. In most of the cases, we complain a lot of body aches. You find that they are actually uncoordinated aches that you will see within the body pains that you cannot explain. They actually have no other good origin. You try to check for everything, but then there is actually nothing wrong with you. And then you will realize that every time you're kept yourself in stress, you are releasing so much of the cortisol, the stress hormones. And then remember, these catecholamines, they are responsible for vasoconstriction, narrowing your blood vessel. And then with that, increasing your blood pressure. That is the main reason you will actually have the heart struggling, because it's the same hormone that will go to the heart and then increase the heart rate. At the end of the day, somebody will complain that I feel my heart. A normal person would not feel the heartbeats. But then by the time you begin feeling your heart beating seriously, you are feeling like you have been running, yet you have been sitting, there is a problem already. And then with headaches, and then dizziness, you feel exhausted, you can't sleep anymore, you feel tired almost every time, fatigue, there is a problem going on. High blood pressure is on the way. And then by the time you actually develop ulcers, because this is what we call the stress-related ulcers. And then in that event, you are producing too much acid. And then at the end of the day, if at all you develop ulcer, you begin feeling a lot of pain over the stomach. And then this has been a problem for years. So many people, young people, are actually suffering all this just because of stress. And then we can actually handle this. And then I will tell you one reason as to why stress has separated so many families. And then you will realize that for men, in most of the cases, you will actually lose libido. And then you will have trouble having sexual intercourse with your partner. And then this is what has caused many marriages ideally to fall apart. Because you find that the man is already too stressed. The woman is already too stressed. Everyone is mad at each other, and then they cannot manage the stress. At the end of the day, issues of erectile dysfunction is actually a very common thing, because the mind is not okay, because the emotions are actually not well controlled. And then now, because you have accumulated so much of the catecholamines, these ones will actually lower your immune system. And then that is the main reason we are actually so weak. COVID has come, it has cleared so many, but then all because we are already weak people. How are we handling our stress? And then I want to take you through at least the most important, the emotional and then the mental symptoms. How do you know that ideally there is already a problem? You will find that almost every employer, whenever already stressed, you'll find that the employees will feel the same. And then at the end of the day, because of anxiety and irritability, you begin quarreling. You begin doing every kind of things. At home, children are to be beaten. The wife is not taken as a wife anymore just because of this stress. How are we handling this stress? We are already very irritable. And then to make it worse, if at all we handle it in a negative way, we're already getting into depression. You isolate yourself. You feel you're not good enough again. And then this is the main reason so many ideally end up still committing suicide. So many who have actually died in that way. But then all because of stress, which would have been managed in a better way. I'm about to give you examples of so many people who handled their stress in a better way and positive way, and then they were very successful. Another thing that you'll see here is always sadness. You find that you always have low mood. You are actually not okay. When people look at you, you have low mood. You are not even happy. You are always sad. The face you put on is always scary. And then that becomes a problem. And then the biggest thing that people ideally, majorly for people at church, you will not realize that there are so many people who hide their stress. And then you cannot detect that. And then you find that when they are with people, happy, they're smiling, but then inside they're dying. And then these are kinds of people who will always ideally have those suicidal thoughts. At the end of the day, you will just be surprised this person is dead. And then dead because they have killed themselves. One thing we really need to know, let's handle everything in a positive way. And then so far, I've gotten so many people who are very prayerful, very spiritual, but then they are dying on the inside. And then you wonder, why are they still dying on the inside? When somebody prays, somebody cries. But then, one thing you need to know, there are so many reasons as to why somebody will pray and then cry. You might think somebody is very spiritual at that time, but then somebody is having a reflection of the problems, of the stress, and then that makes somebody to cry. You will interpret it in a better way. And then I would really say everyone is going through this stress. Not only people who don't pray, even people who pray, even people who have money, even people who don't have money, the poor people, everyone is affected equally. Let's see what we can do about this. And then all the way we handle our stress, for most of the people, they try to handle it with very unhealthy behaviors. And then these unhealthy behaviors are a risk to your life, a risk to your health. And then now for most of the people, they end up developing habits which are not okay. One of them would be alcoholism. And then so many people, so many youths who have gotten themselves into drunkenness, and then they have actually not known how they got there, but then they fail to handle the little stress they had. Some end up in gambling. Some end up ideally in doing some promiscuity behavior, in compulsive kind of sex. And then you would really wonder, why would somebody go to the street? Because he or she has failed to handle the issue of stress. And then that is what we want to handle as of now with you. And then issues of smoking, which are all risks to your life, to your health. And then find people almost every time doing it. And then one frustrating thing, you find that we have abused all kinds of drugs. Come to the employees who are health workers. So many people, because they can't sleep, and then because of the pain that stress will give you, so many people have abused these kinds of drugs. And then all name them, from pethidine to morphine to all kinds of drugs, because they want to sleep, because they want to feel better. And then that you ruin your life, you ruin your health. All because we have failed to handle stress. Let's get to what we can do ideally to handle this stress. No one will ever tell you, and then not until you actually have the insight. You have understood that there is a problem, and then you need help. That is when you will actually understand that you need some help. And that is the beginning point that you will have in your life. You will change the whole of your life. I need to get to you, and then at least for you to understand some of the diseases that are related to this kind of stress. One of them we have is high blood pressure, hypertension. Hypertension is a very serious problem, and then so many people are having sudden deaths, all because of this. If we have failed to manage stress, we have accumulated a lot of cortisol, and then these are stress hormones, and then causing the pressure to be up. At the end of the day, stroke is always the result. And then so many people who have actually died because of these cardiovascular diseases. A number of times, not only one, not only two, but then so many people who have lost lives because of this. Can we see how to handle our stress in a better way? So many people complaining of tension headaches, migraine, and then you would really wonder, where is all this coming from? But then we have failed to handle stress. And then so many people who have actually gotten to lose their memory. They can no longer remember. They can no longer concentrate. Alzheimer's disease, it's really common. And then you will realize that all this is coming because of stress. And then I talked to you already about the ulcers. what we call the peptic ulcers disease. We are talking about depression in this case. And then depression is already worse. Ideally, with all issues of stress managed negatively, will actually be a problem. And then we will realize that for issues of sexual dysfunction, insomnia, you cannot sleep completely, it is all a very big problem. And then these are always complaints in hospitals, all because we have failed to manage stress. But then I want us to have a solution today. People have sought for medical advice. People have sought for drugs. You have taken all kinds of drugs that you would be okay, but then still you are not okay. You have actually taken drugs that would make you sleep, but now even you have reached a point you can't sleep, all because you have failed to handle the stress. But I want to take you through only about 4 processes of trying to manage stress, even without the drugs. You may not need the drugs here. And then these are the things that will change your life. If I told you take these 4 things, very important, very key, you will not go wrong. And then these are what ideally we term as the 4 A's. The 4 A's of stress management. If at all we can get this, then we are already there. All of us, we will not need the drug here. And then these 4 A's, the first one is avoid. And then in most of the cases, when we try to tell you that avoid whatever ideally you feel you can't handle, avoid it. And then this is what I would actually say, because every venture you take, you are taking risk. And then remember, there are challenges you are going to meet. But then, can you avoid the negatives and then take only the positives? I will take you, because stress never began today. It was even there. And then for people who read the Bible, they know very well. And then I would tell you what the man Job did when his wife came to him and then asked him that, I see you a frustrated man now. You are not longer yourself. Why don't you just depart from that God and then you die? But then telling him to do that was actually a communication to him that so many people have these days. You find that you hear so many voices, what we call the auditory hallucinations, trying even to command you to go and kill yourself. And then this is a mental problem. It is so serious with all kinds of stress that you have been going through. And then this is the same thing that came to Job. And then the voice came to him through the wife that, why don't you just do this? Instead, I would rephrase it that it was actually, she was telling him that, why don't you kill yourself? Not until the man realized that the stress he was going through, it was for the good. And then that is when he disagreed with his wife. He avoided every kind of bad things, every negative thing that would come on his way. He avoided it. Can we do that on our own? If at all you have been stressed for all these years, how have you handled it? Have you accepted all the negatives that you are not good enough now, that you cannot handle it anymore? But then I tell you, this man said, no, I can still handle it. He avoided all kinds of negative things to happen into his life, but then he accepted to go with the positive. Can you go with that today? You will not need the drug. I want to tell you something here that you would actually have to know, that a number of us at workplaces, we have gotten into fights that we would not handle. And then sometimes you have clients you are attending to, but then you find these 2 employees are actually fighting each other. I want to help you ideally understand one thing that happened with the man Peter and then Jesus. When they had come ideally to take Jesus away from them, and then he got hold of his knife and then cut the ear. But then Jesus said, no, we don't fight here. In order to manage our stress, we are supposed to do peace talks. We are supposed to be calm. And then in event that ideally we have understood that we can actually avoid fights, we can avoid anger that will cause problems, that you will kill yourself, that you will kill your neighbor, that you will kill your wife, and then you understand that we can actually agree over this, you will manage stress. Can we manage that today? And then we will never need the drug again. And then the other A is about alter. Whichever negative things that come to your life because all these kinds of stress, with depression, it comes to you with negative words always. That you are not good enough, that you have not handled enough, that you cannot move any further. But then I'm here at least to tell you one thing, that one man who ever challenged that, when he was faced with a bigger challenge, this is a man called David. He was faced with the challenge of fighting a man who is a giant, so many times bigger than he was. But then this is a man who handled it in a better way. When the negative words came to him, and then they were telling him, you are so small, you cannot handle it. Now why this useless man? Why have you brought him before me here? But then the man understood and then said, no, I can't accept this. I will change it. That I am not the small one you're seeing, but then I am bigger because of the one who is inside me. So when you realize that this man ideally understood the aspect of altering the negative things, whatever was trying to come to him in a negative way, ideally he altered it and then took it in a positive way. And then you realize that he overcame. And then this is one thing I want you to understand with stress. As long as you accept the negatives in your life, because it will always come with all the negative aspects in your life, and then you begin thinking, no, I'm not good enough, no, I can't handle, there you will actually have problems. Handle it in a positive way, and then you will actually be okay. I need to take you through the third aspect of the haze we are talking about to manage stress. That is accept. That is acceptance. If at all you're actually faced with a difficult moment, a challenging event, and then you have failed to handle it, but then this is a point to know, that always accept, but then don't accept in a negative way, in a positive way. I will tell you at least one person who also managed this in a better way. When Paul himself, being the man who was called, and then they would torture him in all kinds of ways, by beatings, by doing every kind of thing. But then at the end, you see this man still saying one thing, that however much I'm being tortured, but then I know for me to live, it is actually Christ. And then for me to die, still it is him. And then you realize that this is a man who accepted and then ideally knew that his suffering or the stress he was going through was for the good cause. Do you understand that whatever you're going through today, whatever you're actually facing today, it is all because of a good cause? I will tell you this shortly. You will understand that in most of the cases, you will actually suffer a lot of issues, a lot of challenging moments, but then that is preparing you for a future. That is saving somebody in the future. And then if at all you take it positively, you handle it in a better way, you will actually save someone. Look at the man Jesus. And then when things were already tough on his side, but then he made a prayer that, Father, if you could only take away this cup of suffering from me, but then after realizing that it is for the good cause, he has to save someone, even with the stress he's going through, he says, let your will be done. And then I want you to take everything positive, because now stress has actually come to your life with all the negatives. But then can we remove the negatives and then try to get to the positive side of everything and then understand the aspect of stress in a positive way for us to live without the drug? You don't need the drug. You don't need the drug to sleep. You don't need the drug to tell you that, no, I can be thinking in a positive way. That is positive thinking. Positivity is always important. The last thing I want to handle with you is adaptation. How do we ideally handle the issues of stress while adapting to all these kind of things? It is not very easy. But then, giving an example of this man who persisted and then he took everything positive. That is why Apostle Paul says that I know I am not yet there. But then one thing I'm sure about, I have forgotten everything that is behind me, and then I'm still pressing hard and then forward, such that my goal is met. And then if you realize that This is how we actually accept the situation, and then now we try to move on, to press on, at least to see that we overcome. That is handling stress in a positive way without the drug. That is what we are calling adaptation. And then you will actually realize that the man Joseph, the dreamer, who actually had all his brothers around him and then telling them about his dreams, and then they could not accept. They didn't ideally want even to hear. They didn't want to hear about that. But then at the end of the day, he was suffering one stress after another. Look at this. When this man ideally was taken, he went to visit his other siblings. And then now the siblings turned against him. They wanted to kill him. They threw him in the pit. That was another stress. They picked him up. They sold him as a slave. And then that was another stress. And then now working as a slave in at least a better place, a palace. But then again the wife looked at him as somebody who would actually make a better half of the husband. And then again the man was thrown in prison. All these were a number or series of stress this man was going through. This man would break down. And then as I tell you today, that anyone can break down with stress. You can actually be depressed, get into depression because of stress. But then, can we handle it in a better way? The way this man handled it. Much as he was going from one stress to another, but then this is a man who actually accepted, and then now he developed mechanisms, at least adaptations that would help him to get out of all that. This is a man who was not only a dreamer, but then the interpreter of the dreams. And then you will realize that because of all this, he was raised to a better position. And then all the stress he was going through, it was not for the bad, because it ended up helping their siblings. And then the father who was back there at home, it was all because of him. If you don't accept the stressful condition and then you handle it in a positive way, you will lose somebody. But then every time you handle stress in a positive way, you will save life. Joseph did that, and then he saved many lives. Jesus did that, he saved many lives. And then what about you? You want to kill yourself? You want to die today? How many people will you save if you're already dead? So I would really wish that all the viewers all over the world, we are getting to understand the point of stress, that all of us are not spared. Everyone is actually straining at one point, whether financially, emotionally, physically. And then you will realize that if at all you don't handle it in a positive way, you end up in the grave. But then, do you know the people? Do you know your purpose in the world? And then what you are supposed to do? If at all you can only handle stress in a positive way, you will not even need the drug. The headaches will never be there. You will actually not have any pain in the chest again. You will not feel your heart like coming out again, because you will handle it in a better way. So with this, I really want to leave us with all these 4 A's. Can we try to avoid? If we can't avoid, can we alter? Let's change from the negative to the positive. Can we accept in a positive way? And then after accepting it, can we develop adaptations or mechanisms, ideally, that will help us overcome, at least to save somebody in future? This is my message today. And then I would really wish to share with you this as the people who are actually there, and then to help the nations, and then to help our continents, and then to help our people at least handle stress. Can you manage your stress at home? Can you manage stress with your children? Can you manage stress with your wives? Can you manage stress, ideally, with all the colleagues you work with at the workplace, with your employers, with your employees? Can you manage that? You will be, and then you will save life. Thank you so much. Every time we are yet ideally open to you, and then we shall be discussing more and then more. But as for today, we say thank you. Thanks for listening. All your comments are welcome. Thank you so much.